Everybody, Beth here, and today I wanted to do a video right before February 10th, since the general consensus is that February 10th we'll get some Bendy and the Ink Machine news, or something relating to the Dark Revival. The 5th anniversary for Bendy and the Ink Machine is February 10th. The store page on the Joey Drew site, Joey Drew Studios site, is closed until the Dark Revival begins, and everybody's pretty much kind of fingers crossed, like, let there be a teaser, let there be a trailer, let there be some news about Bendy and the Dark Revival. Whoop whoop. Something more than immediately posting a tweet of, happy anniversary, Bendy and the Ink Machine. Now back to work on Bendy and the Dark Revival. Whoop whoop. And yeah, so just a quick video kind of talking about something that I found while I was doing animation history research. I basically spent 15 minutes or so down a Google rabbit hole, and I found this, saw it, and was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Let me share it with the world. Yes, while technically this is kind of I don't think the Bendy and the Ink Machine timeline that we have works as well as it could based off of IRL animation history. I'm not proclaiming that I'm a better author and a better creator, whatever. This is just something I found and then looked at the information we have been given and was like, huh, this is interesting. And I wanted to share it to the world, so ta-da! So just to recap, our official Bendy timeline goes as follows from what I can understand and what I've gathered. 1929, Joey and Henry create Joey Drew Studios, or the Bendy shorts. Less than a year or so later, Henry does the, peace sign, disappears, heads off to California. Chug it along, chug it along. 1946, we get the events of Dreams Come to Life in the summer, and the events of The Lost Ones during the winter of 1946. And then the studio continues on its merry way until it is shut down in 1959, and it is abandoned and so on and so forth. And then Henry shows up, and then may or may not have gotten dumped into a time loop. Who really knows what's going on? At the end of chapter 5, I've seen some people say it's a flashback. I've seen some people say it's a time loop. Yeah. So yeah, that's our official timeline. 1929 to 1959, about 30 years. I don't think that would have worked based off of what I found in the realm of animation history. First off, if you've seen my previous video, in the card, I do a speed paint talk, and I talk about the Hays Code and how there really is no explanation on how that code and Joey worked together, because the rules that everybody in Hollywood had to follow, it had a very explicit rule of, hey, do not make fun of religion. And yes, Joey probably at least attempted once to be like, no. Sure, my short has Demon as the main character. And sure, there's that one scene where Alice makes a boat sink after she sings. But no. I'm not making fun of religion. Clearly, obviously. Come on, I will walk you through this. But given that the Hays Code was not cool and alright with Betty Boop, why would they be chill with a literal demon? It's almost easy fishing, for lack of a better word. And we really don't have an explanation on how Joey got past that. I mean, there's not even a mention of like Joey pulling a fast one and being like, oh, here, I have a short about the Butcher Gang. It's totally code approved. Code people watch it. Code people are like, yep, this is approved. Put a little stamp on it. Give it back to Joey. And Joey hands off a Bendy short to the guy being like, it got approved. See, it's got the sticker and the stamp. I totally didn't just tear it off and put it on another one. But, that also wouldn't have lasted more than maybe twice. So, yeah. That's the first reason. Second reason is, from what I've understand and what I've been gathering from the information that we've got, Joey Drew Studios only did Bendy shorts, and they only did it in the black and white sepia tone rubber hose style. There's nothing more that was done with Bendy, or if Joey Drew Studios did other things. Like other studios during the time frame Joey Drew Studios would have been around, they were doing a bunch of other stuff. Warner Brothers had various Looney Tunes, various shorts, melodies, and stuff like that. And I'm going to butcher the name, so I apologize in advance. Fleischer Studios had Betty Boop, but they had Popeye, they had Superman, they had all that in a bag of chips. And then Disney was freaking Disney. They were doing Mickey, they were doing symphonies, they were doing fairy tale retellings, everything. And Joey only seems to be doing Bendy and black and white. And it's like, okay, Joey's a man of consistency. But 1930 was the first year color animation was really starting to be used as a thing. And we all know Snow White, Disney's feature-length animated colored film, was released in 1937. So, that 1937, 1938 time frame. And sure, not a lot of shorts prior to that were like every time, all time, color, color, color. If I'm trying to run a business and I'm running an animation studio, I'm going to try everything I can to make my character stand out and get butts in the seat. Whether it's like, it's fully colored, it's fully voice acted and synced and colored. I'm getting into a literal fist fight with my cartoon character because, woo, innovation! Or something. So it's like, okay, what do you bring to the table other than annoying the ever-loving crap out of the Hays Code, Bendy? And sure, in a meta sense, I can kind of understand why Meatley and the real-life Joey Drew Studios avoids color, because it kind of, in a sense, ruins the idea and the aesthetic of the 1930s, 1920s style rubber hose cartoon. But at the same time, it's like you have the studio last till the early 60s, like 1959. You could have easily circumvented that problem and been like, collapsed in 1930. Bop, bop. And honestly and personally, I don't think having some color would really detract from the 1920s, 1930s aesthetic. If not, it could actually work more for your horror game. Like, start off in the studio first chapter. It's like, oh, it's colorful. It's like it's paler than like real life. But then as you get deeper into the studio, it loses all of its color, and it's like, oh, whoops, I'm screwed, or something like that. But that's just kind of personally. And finally, big info. The piece of information that I found that I was like, holy crap, I want to share this to everybody. So let's start. The setting of the stage. May 29th, 1941, roughly about 200 Walt Disney Studio employees begin their 5-week strike against the studio, protesting and angry about inequalities regarding the pay structure. You get 3 guys doing the exact same job, all hired at the same time or something like that, and one guy's getting paid $20 more, one guy is getting paid the average, and the other guy is getting paid $20 less, and there's just no way to kind of fix that. And people are being forced to put on their slips, yes, I worked 40 hours a week, when in reality they're working twice, even triple times that amount, and not being able to have access to the cool stuff that the studio has. Instead, they're kind of shoved away into a back room And also, to top it all off, Walt Disney's taking all of the credit and being like, I'm totally awesome. I'm amazing. You should be privileged to be working for me. Yeah. So this big strike happened. It was very big news kind of a situation. And Walt did not do the most appropriate actions, being that he immediately fired everybody who was on strike and had to be pressured by the US government, in particular the National Labor Relations Board, to sign a union contract, or else he was going to get kicked off of the Goodwill Tour stuff. And even then, Disney regarded everybody who went on strike with major contempt, very much. Those guys were just chip on the shoulders. How dare they? I have been betrayed. And even went so far as to remove the credit for the art director for Fantasia, a man by the name of Hart Heineman, and got him blacklisted. And was basically like, yeah, the reason why people striked was because of communism. Not because was a terrible boss and threw gas on the fire. No, it was communism. Yeah, so that's the real life story, real animation story. And we don't have mentions of labor strikes in that kind of sense of scale in the Joey Drew Studios world. We do have mentions of rumors of anonymous employees wanting to get labor unions over the studio's safety, which, on the one hand, very appropriate. It is a walking death trap. How did Joey last that long, even in New York City, with that kind of studio going shenanigans? But it just seems mainly about the studio's safety, and that also took place in 1946, 5 years after this big event in real life happened. And yeah, this was happening over in California, and so maybe off the off chance, sure, Joey didn't hear about it. But there were unions and stuff, and the first animator strike happened in Fleischer's, the studio that made Betty Boop. Fleischer Studios in 1938, and the Screen Cartoonists Guild was formed after that and had been basically helping people start the unions and start being like, hey, y'all need to sign a union contract. And by 1941, there were only two studios that hadn't signed union contracts, which was Walt Disney and the studio that would eventually become Warner Brothers. And so, yes, perhaps Joey dealt with it and didn't figure to write about it. Maybe he just stood outside his studio with a mug in one hand and was like, wow, lots of people are striking. Glad everybody in my studio likes me. But yeah, that doesn't seem to work all that well. And true, there is also the potential that Joey was like, so, Dave from the art department is making rumors about starting a labor strike, huh? I'm gonna have a meeting with him and toss him into the machine. Nothing will go wrong there. But one, we again don't get any mention of this or even kind of, hey, this happened or that. And then two, we all know how the Lost One fight in Chapter 5 ended, where they were more of a threat than the guy with the axe that was angry. So he might have just made himself an inky problem if he tossed people into the machine and was like, all right, sentient ink can't unionize, I'm good. Yeah. So, okay. Beth, you don't particularly care for how the timeline goes. How would you do it? If you neatly arrived kicking down the door with his puppet legs and was like, you do the timeline better or something. How would I do it? Basically, long and short of it, I'd move everything back 10 years. I'd have the creation of the studio be in 1919, so that way Bendy is still within the realm of rubber hose animation and stuff like that, but also not having to deal with the Hays Code until like the end of the lifespan of the cartoon in the studio and dealing with colored animation and all that jazz, but also still having the illusion of a success, as it were. Henry can leave at the start of the studio's history, or you could have him leave in 1929. Personally, I don't feel like that's a big issue. Either way, Henry still leaves. But the big part of it is that Joey Drew Studios doesn't last past, say, 1938, maybe 1939 if we're being really generous. It basically doesn't get into the 40s. He doesn't get to re-release the shorts for wartime, is what I'm saying. And there's, we got the Hays Code and stuff like that towards the end of it, which is kind of starting to put on the pressure. We get the unions and stuff going on. And things don't end up going Joey's way, essentially. Basically, like, in the past, he would be able to be like, hey, it's the Great Depression. You guys want a job? I got you a job. And so he could use that as kind of a incentive to keep people working and not talking about it. Like, hey, you could talk and expose the fact I'm having this giant occulty creation, or you could get paid and help out your family. Which one do you want, bud? And then that kind of stuff could happen because we really don't have much of an explanation outside of pride, naivety, and stuff like that to explain why people just didn't go down the street to Fleischer's or to other studios in relation to that. Yeah. I see. And then story-wise, you could have it be like, okay, I'm looking at my little notes things. I'll just go ahead and read the little blurb that I wrote and kind of give you the sales pitch for my timeline, I guess. Joey Drew, emboldened by his creation's success during the Roaring Twenties, expands his New York studio and hires on more people to work under him. With the Depression hitting a lot of people hard, most of his employees are willing to look the other way at some of the less than savory and kind of occulty aspects of the job. Granted, it's not perfect, as Joey seems to be steadfast in not adding color or innovating in relations to his darling dancing demon, instead promising something even better than that being the ink machine. Problems start to creep up as the cost of said ink machine is forcing him to cut some corners and to go back on his promises made when he was on a hiring spree, while also demanding more of his employees. Rumors and whispers begin to spread of plans to strike and to make Joey take the artist's requests seriously. At the same time, Joey's usual method of skirting past the Hays Code, they're not going to fly anymore. While money could buy some wandering eyes in the past, the scandals of Hollywood's past, along with, the general culture of the Great Depression, abandoning and blaming the 20s for what happened, everyone is going to have to step in line, play their part, and follow the rules, including Joey Drew. With the pressures beginning to mount and Joey not wanting to go through the same disaster that happened when his good friend Henry left the studio, he makes a deal with a mysterious benefactor. A deal with the devil, if you'd be so inclined. And then, of course, we get the ink machine giving us our demon Inky Boy, and the entire studio having a wonderful case of Joey going, some, if not all of you, are going to die. but that is a sacrifice I am willing to make. And then we get skipped to when Henry shows up at the beginning of the studio. We'll try that again. And then we get our time skip and the start of the game with Joey coming to this abandoned studio under the request of Joey, for lack of a better word. Of course, that's just one idea how it could work. I'd love to see if you guys have your own feelings on how the timeline could work. Feel free to leave comments down below of like your own timeline of events, your own story ideas, or maybe it does work. The original timeline does work, and you can leave it there. Let me know. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see what the Dark Revival brings us. So, see you next time, guys. Bye.